Hello, Chris.
Hey.
This rugged. I'm going to keep it steady.
I don't
GM.
know. I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay. Better. GM, Chris, Gareth. GM
GM.
to people in the audience. Quindar,
GM.
Sebestia, Tango Mike. How are you doing, my friend? Ahota. He had a nice week last week on
Hota,
the
the
Golden
king of
Carnival.
golden tickets.
Oh my God, the
That
cosmic
guy's
friends are flowing his way for sure.
guy's been a golden ticket fanatic since the first round or the
He,
first iteration.
yes, the first time he went all in, so yeah, the stats were on his side. But this time he didn't have that many. I mean, yeah, he did have a lot, but percentage percentage wise,
Hmm.
he beat the odds, like winning two of the biggest
Yeah.
prizes with
Well,
I think
and
he got 0.1% of all the tickets. So
that's kind of it's like, yes, on average the people with the most tickets are going to get the prizes, but there's a non-zero chance that there's somebody with a small share getting a massive payoff. And I think that's the beauty of the Golden Carnival, because in the current game, in the main game mechanics, it's like whatever you put in is what you get out, and you can't.
yeah.
There's not really any good way of you changing that. So, yeah, I love to see it. It's, very satisfying to see that, and hopefully, it kind of
Mhm.
gives people some hope that the big guys are not always going to be the ones winning everything.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I think that was proven this week, this
Yeah,
past week.
good,
Um,
good.
but yeah, I see some new people also that are joining the community. So
Mm,
welcome. I think Sebestia is the first time joining for Sebestia. And for the gentleman, I see you guys in the audience. Shout out to you. Welcome to the Stratos community. If you don't know what this is the monthly econ forum. So we have Chris, our head of game economy, and Gareth, our econ analyst. Is that right, Gareth? I don't know. I don't want to butcher your title.
No, yeah, that's perfectly fine.
Cool. And they provide all the updates related to the Star Atlas economy, how things are looking, and we dive deep into that. So if you're playing Sage, this is one of the most valuable events probably. So
yeah.
you understand what is going on.
You know,
So
I'm working on getting Gareth's title changed to King of Data Analytics. So
that,
we're working on it.
That's the
yeah.
first I'm hearing of it, so
We'll get there. We'll get
Econ
there.
Ninja. Just make it official. Econ Ninja. That's the
Econ
title.
Ninja,
Yeah.
King of Data Ninjalytics, says Dom. Very beautiful.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Should we hop in, Santi? Is that okay?
Yeah, just for some context also before we hop in, the guys will be sharing their screen with the presentation on what has been happening and the key highlights. And you can ask questions at any time. Just post them in the chat. I'll be reading the chat and bringing up anything that should be shared with the guys. So,
Beautiful.
yeah.
Yes. So, yeah, as Santi said, this is our monthly economic forum. This is the 7th one. So we've been doing it for over half a year now, and it's an awesome opportunity to disseminate data, information, and data to the community in in a very equal way. A lot of times, people in different time zones they'll miss a message, they'll even miss an announcement, and that can kind of that can be hard to face as a player, or as a member of our digital nation state, as we like to say. So this is an opportunity for us to give everybody an idea of what's going on in the economy, and we have awesome community members who have basically companies that they run, news networks that they run. So this is usually disseminated through those news networks as well. So it kind of makes the dissemination of economic information permanent in a way. So I have, you've noticed I've spent less time in the Discord chatting one-to-one, just because I don't find that a super good way to disseminate this information. So today we've got a packed agenda. We have a lot of really, really cool stuff to talk about, even some announcements of econ products. So I'm really, really stoked. So yeah, let's jump into it. We're going to chat about the scanning update that recently happened. And then Gareth has a super exciting announcement about the econ dashboard, the community-facing econ dashboard. And then I will go over everything you need to know for local markets. There's still some TBD stuff with this update, specifically with respect to the recipes. So I won't go into excruciating detail about the recipe itself, but I will talk about how is it going to function, how's it going to work, how can you kind of get a head start at understanding the local markets, and then we'll finish with a Q&A session. There have been a couple of really good questions throughout the week. Hopefully, I'll answer a few of those. One tiny point I did want to mention, because this came up in our pre-meeting to this call. There was an issue when we updated the map for mud. There was an issue with the richness values being transferred to the new locations when they should have stayed at their old location. So we're working through that. Just keep that in mind as we work through this. So if you have that question, hopefully I've answered it. We're working on fixing that. All right, so let's get into it. Big update, the scanning update. This was an update that we have been thinking about for a long time, and it was all about how do we save players, how do we save our citizens who are playing who are honestly, some of these people are making a living in Sage. So I hesitate to even use the word player, but how are the agents in our economic environment? How are they faring in terms of their costs, and not just game economic costs that we have instituted into the game economy to try and make it a balanced, fair system, but actual blockchain costs associated with playing the game. And I'm going to go a little bit more into detail since we have some new audience members, because maybe you're not quite as familiar with how all this stuff works. But in Sage, because it's all on a blockchain, every single transaction costs you a teeny tiny bit of money. And as the price of SOL on the secondary market goes up, and as priority fees for sending these transactions go up, all of a sudden, across the board, everybody's facing an increased fixed cost of just operating. So it doesn't matter if you have a $100,000 fleet or a $15 fleet, you're still facing the same costs in these transaction fees of mining or scanning. So the whole point of this update is to reduce that fixed cost paid to SOL fees. So what we did was we said, okay, if we slow down scanning, this could potentially save us a massive amount on fees, because about 35 to 40% of our transaction fees paid every single day come from scanning. So this is a huge opportunity for us to reduce the fee burden that players face in game. So the idea was, okay, if we slow down the mechanics such that people are slower scanning, they're sending through fewer transactions, and they're facing lower fees as a result. So if I send through one transaction a day versus 100, I'm facing 1/100th of the cost of fees. So we decided not 100x, but to 6x the entire scanning process. So we're just slowing it down. We're stretching it out by a factor of 6. So this means that the scan cooldown, the toolkit consumption, those were both 6x'd. Those were multiplied by 6. The SDUs per scan that you get was also multiplied by 6. The idea was we don't want to disrupt the market at all. We just want to slow things down. So we're dilating time effectively. We're also increasing the SDUs per sector, and we're increasing the SDU refill rate per sector. And if some of those things don't make sense to you, if you're a new player, I encourage you to go look on our on the StarLS website for the econ game manual. That'll help you understand some of these concepts, or just Discord message, and we have wonderful community members who will happily explain everything to you. So the theoretical maximum decrease in SOL fees from this change, just given the proportion of possible transactions that come from scanning, 38% of transactions come from scanning. We kind of estimate that with this 6x increase in time, we could see a maximum of 31.6% reduction in SOL fees. And we're going to see that we actually beat that figure, which is really awesome. But we'll see that in a few slides from now. First, I want to just show you a few of our time series metrics that we keep track of. These are some of the critical metrics that I'm looking at when I'm studying the health of the Star Atlas game economy. How many scans are there per day? And you can see those dips. Those correspond with outages. Those correspond with cyclicality. Some of the shape of this, has to do with seasonality. You can see number of scans dropped from about 400,000 a day down to 100,000 a day, which is fantastic. That's exactly what we wanted to see. We saw basically we now have 25% the amount of scans as we had previously, which is great. We also saw the average number of SDUs scanned increase from about 100 to about 600, exactly a 6x increase. This is perfect. SDUs over time. This is just remember, we wanted this to maintain equilibrium. We did not want a change in the SDUs found over time, and you'll see we have seen a spike in SDUs found. Not exactly intended, and we're still trying to identify what is the cause of this increase. You can see we're floating in that 9 million range, whereas before we were floating in that 7.5 to 8 million range. So TBD what we're going to do about that update. And then the final metric here that I wanted to point out is just this mean food burn per scan. Of course, exactly what we expected, going from 100 food burn per scan on average up to 600 food burn per scan on average. And this is using on-chain data from our player base. So this is literally, this is what is going on in the game. This is not theoretical. This is not modeled. This is the actual game data. And then, so what, we see all these metrics. This is great. This is kind of from the game economy perspective. It looks like we're seeing what we want to see, but what actually happened on the blockchain side? How much are we saving in fees? Gareth actually put together this slide, but basically we saw a 26% reduction in the number of transactions coming from Sage. So we went from an average of 1.28 million to 0.99 million post update. So you can see the update here in red and the pretty sizable drop off here. So now we're doing about 1 million transactions a day. Before that, we're doing about 1.3 million. So what this does is it drops aggregate fees paid by the environment from 3.72 SOL per day to 2.55 SOL per day. This is a savings of 31.45% across the entire game. That is absolutely massive. This corresponds to about 50 cents per player per day. So all of a sudden, everybody's paying about 50 cents less on average per day than they were before the update. Now, some of this is due to priority fees going down. So it's not all to do with the update, but a lot of it is to do with the update. So this is absolutely fantastic. Exactly what we set out to do, we did. We ended up with exactly that 31.45% reduction in savings. Remember, I said the maximum theoretical was 31.6. So this is a really, really cool result to see. And we hope that this reduction in fixed cost will now it'll effectively subsidize players who want to play the game, and now it'll be even cheaper for players to get involved in the Star Atlas ecosystem, and it'll present an opportunity to churn a profit, an in-game profit for those players who might have a smaller fleet. For those players who 50 cents is actually a lot. If you've got a $20 fleet, 50 cents is a lot of money. All right. With that, that's kind of the update on the scanning update. We're going to jump into the exciting announcement of the econ dashboard. So I'll hand it over to Gareth.
Chris,
yeah, thanks, Chris.
Before we move to this, sorry, Gareth, there's a question on about, it's not about scanning per se, but Larinor is asking a question. If there are any plans to do something similar to mining or freighting, as in keep emissions but balancing it through slower movement and bigger cargo holds.
Yeah.
As in, if you double cargo holds and have speed, technically every freighter miner does the same, but a half of the transactions. Is that something that you guys are considering?
It was actually one of the main proposals that was on the plate. It was when we were doing our analysis, we always we do a cost benefit analysis. What's the cost of developing this? How much time is it going to take? And what's the overall benefit? So the reason we went with scanning is it was the number one vector for savings, right? you saw that it took up 40% of our transactions every day. So the benefit was huge, and it was actually super low cost. All we had to do was update some of these parameters. The mining update would definitely be a bigger update because it would require us to also update all of the ship stats, and would require a few functional changes to the actual blockchain code. So it was evaluated. That one had a smaller upside potential and a larger upfront cost. So we may do something with that in the future, but to be honest, we're hoping to have a more long-term solution to this problem in the future, such that we don't have to actually mess with mining times too much. But it is certainly something that would be on the table if this became a pretty big emergency in the next couple of months. Which, given current market dynamics, I'm not too terribly worried about that. But yeah, definitely a smart idea and something we considered. All right, moving on. Econ dashboard.
Sweet, Santi, am I good to go?
Take it, sir. Yes.
All right. So a few of you guys probably are aware or have heard whispers, but this is the official announcement of the Econ dashboard. Essentially, we're going to release a V1 this year in conjunction with the quarterly report. And from there, we're hoping to get community involvement to expand it out. So you'll notice I have some bullet points here, and at the end, we'll probably actually go through it. So we'll go through these bullet points first. The main goal is to get this data facing you guys, right? We have access to all of this live, essentially minute by minute, second by second data that we have access to make decisions. A lot of this, while currently, some tools leverage using Flipside and things like that to provide data. We want to give the Star Atlas data to you guys in a way that's accessible to new players, easy to access online, constantly updates daily, whereas on some other programs it has to be updated manually. And overall, just something we can build out that's an ecom product that supports the quarterly reports as well, and helps you guys make better decisions in game. This V1 version will mainly be for testing our infrastructure. It is a lot of data, and we are using third-party services to get this to you guys. So just making sure that the data is updating properly, we don't have any downtime, and you guys are actually able to interact with the elements on the dashboard is going to be key for this V1 release. As I said before, after V1 release, we're going to have very frequent updates, as we're basically just not copying and pasting, but leveraging the same info we have for V1 and just adding on data. And that can be based on feedback we get from you guys, what you want to see, which areas are maybe a bit fuzzy and you want more questions around. We can even have stall fees in game, what they are. So even elements outside the Star Atlas ecosystem can be displayed here. So that's going to be great. What the V1 is actually comprised of is 4 pages. The first one being user data broken out by the actual action. Page 2 is emissions data. Page 3 is production and consumption. And page 4 is Starbase warping data. And I will share my screen here in a second. We're at 18 minutes, so you have plenty of time. So just bear with me. Oh, Santi, I don't have share screen access.
Oh, no way. Wait a second. Need to do some things with the roles, but you should be able to do it soon.
Sure.
You have priority speaker, so you should be able. Maybe it was because Chris was.
Oh yeah, I see it now. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry about that.
All good. Okay. Screens. Yeah, this will show. Maybe I'll share some screenshots in the chat. It is showing the full URL. That might not be. Let me just open it locally. Actually, that'll be better for us. But the visuals will be subject to change. We're gonna make it a bit nicer looking. In my opinion, it looks pretty good now, but we want to line up with Star Atlas colors, so we will do that. It is going to be hosted in the DAO website. That's another point.
Interesting.
Yeah, the DAO website is going to be home to anything to do with basically gameplay decisions. So we want the DAO to really be a home for getting a view of the game, and that's a design choice that might change in the future. But for now, dashboards will be available in the DAO. Okay, so it looks like I'm ready to go locally. So let me just share that. All right.
Ship it.
Yeah, ship it. All right, here we go. All right, so what you're seeing right now is basically the editor. This is hosted on my local machine, so no worries there. I'll collapse this so it gets bigger. You'll see it's very simple. And again, this is a lot of data that's going to be streaming to our front end. So we want to make sure that things are in order. So what you'll see on this first page here is our active user data. This is a common question we get and is available out there, but we want to make this accessible. So you'll be able to use sliders, and these sliders will be more useful in other dashboards where there's multiple lines, but you can zoom in. There's hover, the ability to hover per date and see the exact quantity. You'll see the same down here. So basically this one's just producers broken out by what they produce. So components, compounds, consumables, data resources, and raw materials. On the right is the same thing for consumers. So consumers consuming components, compound materials, consumables, etc. What you can it's like questions you can kind of answer by looking at this stuff. Just as an example, if we see that, let's see, producers of, we'll say raw materials is 1,100, and consumers of raw materials is say 500. We know that actually a better one would be data. So if we have 300 data producers, and that's not a good one because data is not updated. Yeah, you get my point. There's a lot of things you can derive from a metric like this. The data section does need to be updated. We're only seeing one person consuming SDUs, which is not correct. So that needs to be updated. But
So
you can see that.
that is actually correct, because the only person who consumes SDUs are Starbases, and I believe there's a single account that would burn that. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's because there's only one owner of those recipes, and with the other recipes, there are multiple owners because the owning wallet is the one that created the recipe. I could be wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure that's why it says only one. But it's still really, like, that in of itself is really interesting. Once we add in recipes that include our SDUs, we'll probably see that number just spike up like crazy.
Yeah, it is on the profile level, so it should be higher. Maybe we're pulling in the Starbase account by accident, but yeah, that'll be fixed. But a quick note onto daily active users so we can get through this. This actually spiked. This is a bit old. This is from December 2nd, 3 days old. And believe it or not, Star Atlas changes quite dramatically day by day. So we have seen this go back up, but you can see the trend over time. We did peak close to release about 1,400. And you'll see this data updated daily once you release it. So you can come back and check what's going on with our users. Next, we get into Atlas emissions. This is broken out by faction, and there may be some slight changes on how other slides are broken out because breakdowns, but you can see the daily Atlas claims. This will be LP allocation and Atlas claimed. So right now it's, I believe, hovering around the 7 million, if I'm not mistaken, mean on the day. And as we noted in the last quarterly, this is for the new players the most stable Atlas submissions has ever been. We are about to shake that up a tiny bit with RFRs, but we will make sure that it's balanced and nothing goes too crazy. But yeah, this is the faction breakdown for Atlas claimers as well. And we're going to do some further QA on this. There's probably a few missing numbers, but you can see these broken out, Oni being the most LP intensive or LP diverse claimers when it comes to the per faction breakdown. You'll see average Atlas claim per player as well. Usually Mud is the highest in this regard. Ooster is really taking the cake recently. In the aggregate, in the Star Atlas ecosystem, Mud are the richest, but it does look like Ooster is, or at least Star-based players are claiming a lot more Atlas on average. So that's great. Again, we'll all be QA'd, so these numbers may change slightly upon release. Next is resource production. We are going to make these a bit more digestible as well, defining consumption ratio and stuff like that. But what this basically tells us is what the production to consumption ratio is, as in for every 1 unit of production, is there 1 unit being consumed, or is there more or less? So for example, recently a spike in SDUs shows us that 3.27x more SDUs were produced than consumed on that day. And you'll see a lot more numbers are closer to 1, indicating that, for every 1 raw material, we'll say on December 2nd, about 1.05 raw materials were consumed. So this is a metric to identify opportunities in markets, where there are shortfalls, where there are potential lagging impacts that you don't necessarily see in price yet. Say, if there's sustained or decline in raw material production, where for every 0.8, we'll say a unit is produced, 1 is consumed, that'll tell you that there's opportunity in the raw material market coming up or currently happening in the market. So, and we see that quantified down here. So you can actually put a number to some of these net production values. So all this is down here is production minus consumption per resource group. And you'll see that is quite diverse as well. And again, you can zoom quite heavily into these, and then you can filter out and just see the ones that you want to see. There's a bunch of, and again, there'll be a few more changes once this releases, but generally for a simplified V1 version, this is what we'll be releasing. And this next one is honestly my favorite page, and that is the warping map. And the interactability here is quite cool. So you'll see this date section in the top left. You can slide this, and it will show you basically a full picture of the activity over time with updated fuel burn, fuel burn per faction, some hover stats, and you'll even be able to just single out a specific day and see where the routes are. And these maps are fully modular on our end, so we can add different labels. And there are tools out there like Evi for the new players that give you a map. But in terms of looking at burn and getting quick and easy access to coordinates and maybe even resource labels that we can add will be huge for the new player, especially looking at Star Atlas data. So, and I'll give you guys a full picture actually since the launch, because we don't really show these massive numbers, but fuel burn from warping alone is in the billion, and not far off from 100 billion. So this is super cool to see. You can see some people venturing far away from their faction CSSs, wow, which is kind of cool. Maybe that's one of you guys in the audience. But yeah, it's just going to be really great if you guys get your hands on this. And again, we'll be adding pages, hopefully very, very frequently based on your feedback, editing pages. And just want to reiterate, the main purpose of this V1 release is to test the infrastructure. Big on that, because I'm sure a lot of you guys know of errors we've had in the past with releasing big updates. with slight problems. So we want to take this slow, and especially when it comes to data and decision making in game, we want to make sure that what we're giving you guys is up to date, accurate, and there's no competitive advantage basically because one person has a faster internet speed or something like that. So yeah, hope you guys like what you see. Lots of updates coming to this in the future, and we will definitely be taking community feedback. Chris did mention this as well, that this will be the first real econ product that's released to you guys aside from the quarterly report, which is more niche in some respects. This dashboard and dashboards that follow will be tied directly into what we talk about and show in the quarterly reports. So just a huge win for the econ department to be able to release something like this, and we're super excited.
Great job, man. Love it.
Yeah, this is so cool. Definitely a massive props to Gareth because he's the primary kind of scientist behind that dashboard. And you can already see how cool it is, and it's really just the tip of the iceberg. There's so many other visualizations we can do, especially with that map. I'm totally agree with Gareth. Like, the map is the coolest thing. I'm thinking about the local markets update and creating a map. You could visualize volume trade across the galaxy. You could visualize prices across the galaxy, and it could potentially even be a place to identify, price disparities and say, oh my gosh, hey, the price in this region is so much cheaper than it is in this other region, and because it updates. I don't know if this dashboard will start by updating in real time, but it will at least update on a daily basis without any intervention. It's just all automatically updated. It could potentially be almost kind of a real time tool for people to use, much like Evi. So really, really excited about the tool.
W's in the chat for the Econ Ninja and the dashboards. W's. All right, Chris.
Thanks, guys. Continue. Yeah, no, hard to follow that up, but we also have another economic update coming out, or a game update coming out, and you guys are all probably aware of it, but it's local markets. So one of the critical pieces of making a big kind of grand space MMO is having having localized marketplaces. One of the most beautiful parts about playing in these grand strategy games is exploiting and having to suffer the consequences of local price disparities between one region and another. These price discrepancies are going to introduce so many opportunities for arbitrage, for freighting. It will open up an entire world of gameplay, not to mention the positive impact on the DAO from increased revenue coming from the marketplace as players start to substitute their potential over-the-counter trading or OTC trading for actual in-game trading. So there's a ton of positive economics that will come from this. We discussed that in a previous economic forum, so I don't want to spend too much time talking about the benefits of local markets, but that update is coming very, very, very soon. And along with it, we're going to also reintroduce an old mechanic that is called, at least it used to be called, an RFR. Now, most people who are veterans of the ecosystem will know what a RFR is, and we may call them something else. But basically, what this is it's a bundle of resources that you put together as a player in the game. So you might craft an RFR out of an SDU, radiation absorber, a framework. You put these things together, and then you create this RFR. And what the RFR stands for is Request for Resources. And it's basically a bundle of goods that you're turning in to the Council of Peace in order to get a reward. And in this case, the reward is Atlas. So this is probably the launch plan. Now, I just want to, obviously, we always kind of precursor everything with, hey, this is all subject to change. You guys know that. But as of right now, the plan is, and it's probably less likely to change the closer we get to release, and so probably this is going to be the final form, but always there's room for changes. We're going to start with one recipe per faction, and each recipe is specifically curated to that particular faction. And so you can kind of see the assets there. Those are what the assets are going to look like. I just got this from Danny today. I'm feeling really, really excited about the direction that we're going in. And RFRs, again, the naming we may change. Chose is in the audience, and we've been going back and forth about some really, really cool kind of lore. So RFR is probably not the term that we're going to use, but for these material requests, we're going to have a whole bunch of flexibility. Right now, we're just going to have faction to faction variation, but we could have location to location variation. We could have all sorts of different variety of ways for people to get access to different types of these crates. And so you're going to craft one of these crates in the crafting menu in Sage, and then you're going to fly to a specific starbase in order to sell that to the Council of Peace. So the DAO is going to have a buy order at very specific starbases for these assets, and it's up to you to transport those to that starbase and sell them. So this opens up a lot of really interesting dynamics, one of which is a freighting career. I might craft these things, but I don't really feel like transporting them all the way to the specific starbase that it's supposed to be sold at. So I might sell it at my local starbase, and then a freighter is going to pick that up, and they're going to trade it in at the distant starbase for whatever the redemption value is. The starbases, at least to start, that are going to be available, that are going to have purchases set for these assets. For the mud, you can see the list there. For Oni and Ooster, you can see their lists. So those are the starbases that you will be able to sell these assets at. So you can, I realize now how messy this graph is, but you can see the starbases as as they're positioned from the CSS in addition to their distances. The way that I balanced this out was basically I had two constraints when I was optimizing my function. The one constraint was that the average distance between these markets and the central space station must be equal between the factions. And the other was that the sum of distance between these starbases and between each faction was also equal or very, very similar, very close. So believe it or not, it was much harder to optimize this equation than you might think. But we ended up with this list. And I'm really happy with the list because it includes a smattering of different starbases. So you can see there's Mud 2 and Mud 5, which are both relatively close to the Mud CSS. But then we've got some more distant starbases like MRZ 7, which is 24 units away, MRZ 9 and MRZ 8, which are both 30, 40 units away, and then MRZ 12, of course, which is 26 and 37 respectively for MRZ 9 and 8. So we have a smattering of short to long distance starbases. And the goal here is to create dynamics such that people are encouraged to go to these distant places and turn in recipes. So a couple of notes that I want to make. We are going to launch, very, very, very likely that we're going to launch with a single redemption value for all of the recipes. So regardless of whether you're turning it into MRZ 12 or Mud 2, we're going to have the same redemption value. Now, I understand that this is potentially going to create some awkwardness in that you might say, why would I ever turn it into MRZ 12 if I can turn it into Mud 2? But remember, we now have local markets. So not everything is going to revolve around the CSSs. It might revolve around different space stations. So that's something to keep in mind. And the reason that we want to launch with a single value across the map is because we want to be we're economists, so we care about experimental structure. We want one value, and then we can compare dynamics between the different locations based on that single value. If we have multiple values running around, it'll be very difficult to run what's called a causal analysis ex post, meaning we won't be able to identify what is the cause of certain player behavior if every single starbase has a different price. So we're going to launch with a single price, understanding that might cause some awkwardness. And I want to make it completely clear. This may not be perfect when we first launch. There might be discrepancies between the factions. There may be discrepancies between starbases. It might be the case that nobody ever fills an order at MRZ 8. And we want to try and work through those slowly over time. So we will be adjusting and tweaking these recipes and these prices to kind of match with the ecosystem. So yeah, that's about as much as I wanted to say on the location topic. Trying to think if there was anything else. Oh, there was a question about rotation. So one of the mechanics that we wanted to introduce here was recipes popping up in different locations and being basically fully filled at other locations to try to keep the map fresh and keep things interesting. The current loop where you turn assets in for LP, it can get kind of stale. It's the same thing over and over and over again. What we thought would add a lot of interesting dynamics to the game economy is if all of a sudden the locations of these starbases are changing all the time, not every few minutes or every few hours, but maybe every few days or every week, these locations are changing. So we're still tweaking on how we're going to do that, but the current idea is that we'll have 3 active orders at one of the at 3 of the 6 starbases at any given time, and then once that timer runs out, we'll randomly select 3 new starbases. And so it could be the case you end up with MRZ12 might be picked twice in a row or 3 times in a row because of random chance. The idea here is that it forces players to adapt and it forces players to move around. This will introduce, as a consequence, it will introduce opportunities for savvy, smart players who are paying attention to hopefully execute on opportunity. You can imagine if there's one region of space where the price is quite low for these resources, and it's quite low because there's not really there's not a whole lot of demand for the resources in that region because there's nowhere to sell those assets. All of a sudden, there becomes a buy order in that location. What this could do is it could drive demand up in that area, raising the prices of resources in that area. So as a player who's maybe you go out and you start to collect resources in that area, buying them, arbitraging them, and all of a sudden you're able to turn them in for a profit. So that's the type of dynamic that we're trying to instill here. Again, still some TBD, still some stuff that's work in progress, but we're really, really excited about this update. I think these material bundles are going to be a real, just a complete game changer for the economy. So then we'll have the Golden Carnival, the local markets RFR loop, as well as the LP loop, all running simultaneously. One final note, and I think I mentioned this in the last update, is in the last forum, we will be trimming the LP Atlas emissions slightly in order to accommodate for the Atlas emissions that are going to come from this update. So I estimate that in the long run, we'll see about 1 to 2 million Atlas emitted from this gameplay loop, at least to start. That is my crude. That's my crude simulation has returned that result. So we're going to adjust the LP Atlas emissions accordingly so that we see a net 0 change in Atlas emissions across the ecosystem. We don't want to keep inflating, the rate of Atlas inflation over and over and over. So yeah, we're keeping that stable. We're quite happy with the level we're at right now. So we want to kind of maintain that. So just a really quick note there. But yeah, Q&A. I've seen a couple of questions come in. I'm sure there are some questions.
Some good questions, Chris. Some good questions. Are you ready?
Yes, let's do it.
Sip of water. You ready?
Yes, I forgot to get my water, but
oh no.
Yes.
But yeah, there's a question from Sim. He said, Chris, may I have a question? I'm really looking forward to the local markets, and I believe it's an update that will bring many opportunities. However, as a player, I've noticed it in some games like New World that under certain conditions, there can be significant market fragmentation, which can become problematic with fewer players. What do you think? Are these concerns unfounded?
Yeah, so I think what they're talking about is like if you have, let's say you've got 100 traders, and each person contributes $100 of liquidity each day, and you've got 1,000 marketplaces. All of a sudden, you're splitting up a very small amount of liquidity across many, many, many star bases. And honestly, this was one of the concerns that we had initially in our original kind of when we were considering this update. That was one of the main concerns. But I feel very, very confident given that we have 300-400 players in each of the factions every single day. I'm very confident that we're going to see plenty of liquidity between these markets to support each and every single market. You can imagine, you split 400 players across 17 star bases, and there's still a good couple dozen players per star base. So I'm not too terribly worried about the liquidity or the market fragmentation. And in fact, as long as it doesn't result in certain markets crashing, although that is a really interesting prospect, as long as it's not detrimental, I should say, I think that dynamism, yeah, I don't know, that dynamic is really cool. I think it would be pretty cool to see the price of iron ore collapse in a region. Uh, and perfectly healthy somewhere else. It's just super interesting to think about the consequences there. And likewise, like, it would be really interesting to see a material just skyrocket in value in one region and not the other. So I'm excited for the interesting gameplay dynamics that will occur as a result of this fragmentation, and I'm not worried at all about liquidity for each of these markets. Certainly, your CSSs, your nearby star bases are going to have higher liquidity than your distant star bases, but I think that's a feature, not a bug.
It's nice. Liquidity will move depending on the market as well, right, Chris? If there are better opportunities in some.
Well, exactly. If there's an opportunity to be had at a distant starbase, for example, let's say the price out there is going for a really, really cheap. Well, maybe I can pick that up for a super cheap price and then sell it at the CSS. And when I pick that up, it reduces that outstanding sell order or it removes that sell order, thus increasing the price. So I actually think that we'll probably see stability across regions in the long run in prices. I think that the intertemporal instability will be very interesting to look at, though.
Cool. There's another question, Chris, about the RFRs, which is if we know already the weight of the RFRs.
The physical weight.
Yeah.
That is a good question, actually. I believe that's a good question. I don't want to answer that publicly because I don't want to give the wrong answer. It's a really good question, though.
Okay, so you will know whenever the recipe is live.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, no alpha for that one. No alpha for that one. Is it going to be the same recipe for the 3 factions for RFRs?
So that's kind of the uncertain part right now. The desire is so we had originally planned for a single recipe to begin. So each faction would have its own recipe, but the recipe would be the same. So there would be the mud recipe, the Oni recipe, but they would be identical. There's been some chattering inside of the company about perhaps varying those recipes to the specific factions. So we'll see. TBD on that. That's definitely still one of those things that's still being worked through.
Thank you for the answer, sir. Another one is about the Mamba X's. If there's going to be ship crafting after the RFR's release.
There's no plan to changes there. That's honestly, it's not something we've really thought too hard about. We've seen stability in those markets. So I'm not too worried about leaving those open. At the end of the day, it's all about allocation of resources. If people want to move their production to Mamba X's or move their production to RFRs or LP, that's totally fine. So don't plan any changes there.
Okay. Let me see if there are any more questions. Bob says the distance to the bases with RFRs is balanced from the CSS, but would have been operated on tier 5 bases in space for a long time. I don't know if that was a question. I think it was part of a different.
Yeah, I don't.
This
The
discussion.
distance to the bases with RFR is balanced from the CSS, but we've been operating on tier 5 star bases in the space. Oh, I see what you. So basically, like the way that I balanced the locations was based on the distance to CSS. Why I could have chosen any tier 5 star base, and I actually think that's true. And the reality is, I could have selected any of the star bases to be. I could have just selected any starbase within each faction. It wouldn't matter. The idea is we want to balance it between factions, right? So we want to randomize, but we want to randomize equally, so that if we ended up accidentally randomizing in such a way that hypothetically Mud ended up with all of their most distant starbases being local markets. That's probably going to be worse for them than Ooster, who maybe has a more equal distribution. So all I did was choose a centroid in order to do the optimization procedure, so that we have an equal kind of distribution. So yeah, definitely could have chosen a different centroid, but I don't think, my strong intuition is that won't matter in the long term. And the reality is we want players to react according to those markets, right? So, hey, we're screwed because we don't have a tier 5 starbase near this market. But Oni has a tier 5 starbase near the market. How can we improve our gameplay, our economic prosperity? Maybe we need to craft a tier 5 starbase there. So hopefully players will actually react, and then as we add in further updates, like destruction and combat, those will really just meld really well with this concept.
Cool. Another one that I see is about the recipe. Are we going to share the exact recipe, Chris?
Yeah. So we had finalized the recipe. We'd had it finalized for about a month, and then there was some some last minute decision making inside the company that maybe that might change. So TBD on that. We'll announce the items. We'll announce the items when that time comes. Yeah, there was some last minute, let's call it a last minute scramble, and so we're going to potentially update the actual recipe itself.
Okay. Yeah, sounds good. Appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah. So apologies about that. That's on us.
No worries. It's okay. It wasn't live yet, and people know things can change. I don't see any other questions right now. I don't know what Maneko is saying. I think there was a question from Neo Armstrong before, but I missed it. So if they can repost, that will be great. Lots of chatter. I'm scrolling through everything.
Earther wants to know when.
When?
I will tell you we have a date. That is all I will tell you.
We have the date. We're waiting for 100% confirmation to share it. You know how it is.
Yep.
We want people to get pissed.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's all fun, all fun stuff having to
We're pretty
balance.
close. We're very close.
Yeah, I don't know. Are we allowed to say that?
Yeah, we're very close. That's all. That's all we can say.
Very close.
Yeah. Let's see. I think Gareth, there's a question for you on if you're going to provide API for third parties to use the analytics page.
So right now, how our data environment works is we're pulling from a third-party provider who basically parses out and streams. You might have seen them on Twitter. They're called Hello Moon. We ingest those streams that are only relevant to us, and then we do our own parsing and manipulation to make the data readable and relevant to the players. And then now this data that we've had transformed and all this stuff for a while, and checked for quality and things like that. Now that is being streamed to the dashboard. Now, in terms of making that available, it's definitely not something that's impossible to do. That's for sure. It definitely could be something that comes down the line. I do recommend Flipside as an alternative to sort of searching for that data on an open source platform. It does require a bit more lift than something that we'd provide with accurate labeling and lookup tables and things like that. But yeah, for now we don't have the infra in place to provide an API, but it's definitely something that is possible. So for now, we'll say it is possible, but no plans right this second.
Okay. Cool. There's a suggestion from Celex for the dashboard, for the production consumption ratio dashboard, for it to be based on hardness of R9 materials and weight of component materials, as 1 PA is not the same as 1 food.
Yeah, we can apply different constraints and weight them based on richness values and things like that. The information that's derived there would still be kind of the same based on how we slice it, right? So that is a good idea. I'm not sure that I'll make it into the V1 just because we want to do the least amount of transformations possible right now, but that is something I will note to consider, because again, these updates for the dashboards will come out much more quickly than you guys are used to with Sage updates and things like that. So yeah, thanks for that. We'll note that.
That's like a huge advantage of this architecture is we can literally push the updates. If we update the dashboard, which we have like very, very easy write access to that, then it'll immediately update on the website. Because the website's just, as far as I know, the website's literally just effectively calling an API, and so it's updating that in real time.
As easy as an iframe, yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Chris, will the ship redemption recipes be refilled?
Yes. Last I checked, they weren't empty. Are they empty?
No, they're not. But they are asking.
I see. Yeah, TBD on that, but I don't see why not. The whole kind of point behind. So what is it? Actually, I won't comment on that. I'm not sure. We haven't really discussed that.
Okay. Then never mind my answer that I believe it was going to be refilled. I take that away.
It may be, but it also may not be. So just
yeah, exactly.
I'm hedging. Just
Yeah.
maybe not.
No taking away. Santi will provide. I guess I'll just have to add my ships there.
Trying to look to see how many are left in those wallets. I want to say it took us like 3 months to run out of the first supply, so probably coming up to the end there. But yeah.
Cool. Thoughts on the impact on rewards for providing food to starbases when LPH Atlas goes down? I guess the missions.
Thoughts on the impact on reward of providing food to starbase when LP. Oh, I see. So the LP reward for providing food, because so I would argue that this is going to apply to every single aspect of the LP emission process. So this could be food, this could be toolkits, and this could be upgrading materials. All of a sudden, the value per LP is going to go down. That said, the value per LP is going to go down, but there's going to be a really, really attractive alternative out there, namely RFRs, or whatever those assets end up being called. We haven't finalized our naming convention quite yet. We're thinking faction supplies is kind of the direction we're leaning. Once that becomes available, all of a sudden, a lot of productive resources are going to go towards those. And what happens to the value per LP when fewer people are producing LP? All of a sudden, the kind of price of an LP increases. It skyrockets because a single LP is worth as much as 1 over the total supply of LP being produced each day. So if the total supply of LP being produced each day decreases, say 30%, 20%, all of a sudden your LP is 3 times more valuable. So while yes, it may go down immediately, how the LP market reacts is going to determine what the ultimate price stands on. So really, kind of, I have a metric that I keep track of called LP per atlas earned, and this is basically just takes the total LP divided by the total atlas on a single day, or sorry, total LP divided by total atlas. So it tells you how many LP does it cost to get an atlas on that day. It's effectively the LP cost of atlas. And those have actually been steadily going down in the last couple of weeks. But what we could potentially see is, even though the atlas going out has changed, so that the denominator goes down, and the price of atlas goes up, so that LP price goes up, basically meaning that if you think of LP as a currency, it's being devalued in this case. Its value is going down. But the value might go back up if there are fewer LP in the pool to begin with. So that makes the numerator decrease as well. And then all of a sudden, the price will probably remain stable in the long run because markets are efficient. And so every single time there's an opportunity to get a profit in LP versus RFRs, people are going to switch to LP. And so players are very, very smart, and they're going to balance this. They're going to pursue whichever career is best for them from a profit perspective. So I anticipate there being actually very little impact to the LP market if we get everything right, at least in the long term.
Nice. We're at the hour, so I think we're good to close. We also replied a bunch of questions as well. So yeah. I don't know, Chris, Gareth, anything to close?
I'm just very, very excited for local markets. I hope it's a clean launch, and I was almost just about to spoil the date on accident, but hope it's a clean launch, and really excited.
Awesome. Gareth, my friend?
Yeah, no, that was great. I think we've become much more efficient at delivering some of the information with all those questions we had time to answer at the end. But yeah, thanks for the positive feedback on the dashboard. Super excited for that. One small note I'll make on that as well. The effort that's put into this, as well as the whole econ department, is ultimately to just make data and the quarterly reports, and obviously to manage the game, but make data and information more accessible. Same initiative with the forum. So just thanks to you guys for being so enthusiastic about the forum and giving us the reason to create the dashboards and provide these quarterly reports that we've been putting out now for, God, I don't even know how many months or how many quarters it's been, but it's been quite a few. So thank you guys, and I think you're gonna like what's coming up soon. So I'll end on that.
Nice. All right. Thank you so much, Gareth and Chris. As always, I appreciate the insights and the information. And thanks to everyone who joined. This was the Stratos Economic Forum number 7, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.